Bluetooth mode. Bluetooth connected successfully.
Hello there, today we will be looking at how to modify Fiat Stilo car radio to add a Bluetooth receiver into it. But first, a warning. Following this guide may result in destroying your stereo, setting your car on fire, changing sexual orientation of your pet fish, and causing destabilization in one of third world nations. Watching this video will cause severe cringe, and looking at my lousy soldering may cause physical and mental harm to you and or structural damage in your local convenience store. You know, the one on the corner next to the barber. You have been warned. Okay, so looking at the schematic, you already know what to do if you watch my last video. Basically, I'm using 4 relays and enabling them via a main switch, and also powering the Bluetooth receiver and sending the signals from the Bluetooth receiver into the inputs of the radio, and also resetting, basically hanging the main integrated circuit in the radio. Bluetooth receiver I'm using is the cheapest one I was able to find on AliExpress. It has a USB port to power it and a jack port to send the signal out. And that's basically it. It's a very simple construction. If you don't want interferences, then I recommend using AUX in, but in case of this Bluetooth receiver, they are basically negligent in normal use.
Mode. Bluetooth connecting, please wait.
In this shot I was holding the speaker to the microphone of the camera, so that's why you were able to hear them so well. It's really easy to open this Bluetooth adapter. Just use any kind of spudger and basically it will give an it's usually not glued or screwed. Inside there is a pretty simple board with basically one chip and everything soldered onto it, and we will be also taking a look at what current it takes. I noticed that during connection it will that there is a small spike of current to something like 150 milliamps, but then it will go down to something like 50. Here are the relays. Those P5 relays are basically 2 relays in one package, so we can see now 4 relays, and they are running on 5 volts, so like everything in our circuit, and they can switch some high currents, but we will be using for audio and switching to ground only. As you can see here, I marked the plus and minus of the USB connector, and also left channel, right channel, and ground. So from left side there is basically those connectors are left, right, and ground. I flew some new solder onto the pads to make desoldering easier. I recommend using Phillips head screwdriver to help you desolder the jack socket. Same thing applies to USB plug. You have to flow some new solder onto it to make it easy to solder it. Make sure you clean up the pads afterwards, even though metal ones are not connected. Now we have a clean board and we can get to our car to remove our stereo. Here I'm using basically 2 brass wires to make a makeshift key to remove the radio, because I do not have the original key, and you can help yourself with removing it by using a spudger and putting it behind the front panel, but it's possible also to remove it simply by opening the right hand side compartment. After you do that, make sure you disconnect the power, that's the white connector, just because if you hold it on your knees you may by accident turn on the radio when you are disassembling it. there are 4 black screws behind the front panel. All of those screws are stars. 2 screws on the backplate that holds the top cover. You can help yourself with a spudger to remove the top cover. You have now access to the CD player, but you won't be able to remove it. There are 4 screws on the top of the CD player. Before you remove the back plate of the front panel, so this plastic thing I'm unscrewing right now. You will have to remove 10 aluminium screws in total and 4 black ones for the front panel. Disconnect the CD player and front panel, and now you can take the CD player home to start soldering. I also take the long cord with AUX in because I still have my previous project connected. You have to put something between the board and the chassis to have a better access to the pins on the board. Now you have to solder your audio cable onto the pads on the board, and basically the blue wire is currently connected to the left channel, red wire to the right channel, and white wire is connected to audio ground. I want to keep my previous modification in place, so I will be soldering onto the wires that are already soldered onto the board. Make sure that you use a lot of strain relief, because this is a very delicate connection and it can break when you are driving in your car and the stereo is moving around. Now I will be soldering the reset wire onto the reset pin onto the board, and so I can use this later on. I also need a wire connected to the GND. There is a huge pad next to the big cord. Make sure you get a nice button on a long wire that you can place inside the cockpit of your car, and make sure you secure it with a heat shrink. Now it's time to solder a wire to VDG2 pad. That's a 5 volts anytime your radio is connected to your car, even if it's not on. I taped together 2 relays and connected their plus and minus pins, and only extended the pins that I will need when connecting the audio and reset pin. Now I will solder the plus after the switch, and also solder it to my Bluetooth module. Now I'm soldering the ground pin to the minus of the relay switches, and also to one of the pins that I will, to the other pin I will connect the reset pin from the radio, and I will be basically shorting it to ground. Now let's connect the previously soldered audio basically in for the radio to the relay switches, and so three wires, left, right, and ground. And now reset wire to the relay that will connect it to the ground. Now I can start soldering the output of the Bluetooth receiver. So there will be three wires to respective ones on the relay. So left input to right, left output, right input to right output, and audio ground from the Bluetooth receiver to the audio ground of the radio. I'm using zip ties to make sure that relays are secured, and basically you're done. You can also use zip ties for a strain relay for the switch cable, and that's it. So as you can see here, there is a lot of space, even though it's really messy.
Bluetooth connected successfully.
It works okay. I will disable the Bluetooth and play the CD. I had a question in comments: what will happen when you solder the reset pin to the ground and start the radio without the CD? You will basically have a reading disc blinking all the time, and that's basically it. Nothing else will happen, and you will have the AUX in at all times. Last thing I wanted to show you is an idea that came to me after I did all the work, and I will not test it in the future, but it may be possible to use only two relay switches by switching not the plus pin but the minus pin and shorting everything to ground. So reset Bluetooth ground, Bluetooth audio out ground, and the minus pins of the relays. It may work, but it may also cause some issues or simply break your stereo. So do this at your own risk. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.